Okay, today's daf is Masechta Avodah Zarah Mem Aleph 41, and we will begin just right before the Mishnah because we left off. We didn't finish the parak yesterday. We ended off yesterday's sugya, very interestingly enough, with the topic of apple cider vinegar and its health benefits, that it cured the gut of Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Anyway, the Gemara got into that discussion of there are certain items that you're not allowed to buy from a goy if it's selling from a basket in front of him, because we are afraid that maybe he sprinkled wine on that item. But if he brings it out from his storage, he brings the same item from his storage, then you're allowed to buy that item from him because he didn't put wine on top of it. Because if he put wine and it's stored for such a long period of time, it's going to ruin it. So therefore, that you're allowed to buy it from him. So that's was we learned. Let's say, yeah, certain grasshoppers that if he brings it from the oitzer, from his storage, you're allowed to buy it from him. Kosher grasshoppers, but the same kosher grasshoppers, if you're buying it from the basket in his store, then it's usher because he might spray wine on it to make it look nicer. So then the Mishnah said, "V'chein l'truma." Right, hi, Lewis, we're just right on Mem Amid Beis. V'chein l'truma. The Mishnah said, "V'chein l'truma." The same idea of l'truma. What does that mean? My v'chein l'truma. Amar Rav Sheshes v'chein l'koyin. The same will hold true for a coin. Let's say a coin amaretz. Hechashud limkar truma l'shem chulin. He's selling food. Now we're going to suspect that he's selling truma that he received for free, and he's telling everybody it's chulin. So then, lifonav hu da'aser. If you're buying it from like a basket of food in front of him, then you're not allowed to buy it because we suspect that really it's truma food because he's a kohen, and he's trying to part with them, saying that they're chulin food, which obviously chulin food you get more money for. Avo, says the Brisa, says Rav Sheshes, habo mina oitzer umina heftek umina slula. If he, if he, uh, if he, if he brings it out from the oitzer, from his storage house, then it's mutter to buy it from him. Because listen to this thing. Irtis mirtis. He's very afraid to get caught. Savar, he thinks, Shamei be Rabbanan. The Rabbanim are going to hear all about his tricks. Umafsa de and they're going to confiscate his entire warehouse. So if it's a basket, he's willing to take the risk to pass it off as chulin. But if it's his warehouse, he's afraid if the Rabbanim will find out that it's really truma, and he's selling from the warehouse truma and marking them as chulin, the chachamim are going to come to his house and then confiscate his entire warehouse. So therefore, he's not going to lie. And if he tells you it's chulin, you're allowed to buy it from him if he pulls it out of his warehouse. Hadron alach ein mamid. Then we finish the second parak of Masechta Avodah Zarah. Now we begin the third. Now every Avodah Zarah we know is also bahana. Not only is the Avodah Zarah also bahana, but also the utensils for an Avodah Zarah is also bahana. Let's say a shovel that's used to stir the coals on the Avodah Zarah, and of course the animal is also bahana of an Avodah Zarah. But what happens? Kol hatzalamim. You find a statue, any type of statue. Okay, you find a statue of a human being, like you could have the statue of the North Korea leader, right? Here's the North Korea leader. So you have a statue over here. So that you don't know, do they worship that statue as an Avodah Zarah? So Rav Meir is going to hold Asurin. Any statue that you find, you don't know if it was used for an Avodah Zarah, if it's a human statue, is Asur. Once a year, everybody bows to that statue, and it becomes an Avodah Zarah. Divrei Rab Meir. So no matter where you are in the world, if you find a statue of a human being, presumably he's the king, then you are not that statue is Asr Bahana because in Rab Meir's place, they used to worship that statue once a year. So if you take a look at this picture, actually they're bowing to the statue of the leader of North Korea, right? Now, Chachamim says no. If it's a statue of a human being, you don't know for sure that they worship them, and most likely they're not worshiping. It's just a statue, of an important person. So it's a statue of George Washington. So Eina Aser, it would not be Aser Ella only Kol Sheyesh Biyadei Makal, or Tzipor, or Kader. If it has in its hand a stick, a bird, or a ball, then it's a proof that they're worshiping that statue. Because once the statue is holding on to something, showing that it has the power over the entire world, so then that's a statue that's for sure being used as an Avodah Zarah, and therefore it's Asr Bahana. So Chachamim says it has to be holding a stick, a bird, or a ball. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, Af kol sheyesh biyodai kol davar. If it has in its hand any type of item, it could be holding a rock. It's proof that it's worship, doesn't matter, and only now you know for sure it's an Avodah Zarah. So now the Gemara says like this: if you find a statue, Rab Meir said a human statue is always aser because they use it one time a year. So the question is, why would the Chachamim say that it's not aser? If this particular statue is worshipped one time a year, ma tama de rabbanim. What would the rabbanim say? Oh, it's not aser ba'ana. If it's used as an avodah zarah, it doesn't have to be used every day. It could be used once a year, and the whole statue becomes aser ba'ana. So Amar Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, bim koyma shara meir hoya oivden oiser pamachas b'shama. In the place where a mayor lived, maybe a mayor lived in the Far East, La Havdil, they would serve that idol one time a year. One time a year, they would serve that seller. So that was where a mayor lived. But what happens in New Jersey, you find the same statue, but Rab Meir, the Chayesh Lemiyuta. Rab Meir is always gives credence to the minority. So Gaza Shar Makaimis Auto Isim. He made a gzera that any place that you find a statue is Asabana, maybe you'll find the statue in the place where Rab Meir lived. And Rab Meir's place, it was for sure used as an Avodah Zarah. So all over the world now, every statue becomes Asr Bahana. Rabbanan don't give credence to any minority. So just because in the where a mayor lived, they used to serve the statues once a year, but that doesn't apply all over the world. So like Gaza Shar Makayim is they didn't geyser that place, all the other places, maybe that place. In other words, that since 90% of the world doesn't serve statues, human statues, so therefore wherever you are, we're not going to make a gzera this place that they don't serve. Maybe you'll come to a place that they do serve the statue. So therefore, all the places and all statues, Chachamim hold that a statue of a human being is not Asr Bahana. Only if it is holding on to a stick or a bird or a ball, that's a siman that this statue is used for an Avodah Zarah. And then it's a for sure Asr Bahana, even according to Rabbanan. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel qualified and said, it's not that you find a statue, it's Asr Bahana according to Rameir. Let's say you find a chess piece that's in the shape of a human. So Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel said, Rabbi Meir meant Bandarte Shamalachim Shaninu. It's a statue of somebody who is a king. It's not just a statue of any person, but it's a statue of somebody who's a king. And Amar Rabba Babachon, Amar Rabbi Yochanan explained, and this statue was Oimden al Pesach Medina Shaninu. You find it at the entrance to the country. So if you find it at the entrance of the country and it's a statue of a king, therefore, in the place where a mayor lived, they probably worship that idol, that statue, one time a year, let's say on his anniversary of his death. And because of that, therefore, that statue is an idol. So a mayor said that all over the world, if you find a statue by the entrance of the city and it's a king statue, no matter what, it's also B'Bar Hana. That was the opinion of Rameir. Now we go to Amir Aleph. Amar Rabba said, the machlokes between Rameir is Bishal Kfarim. If you find a statue that belongs to villages, to town, Ava Bishal Krachim, if it was a statue in a city, Divrei HaKol Mutarim. Everybody would agree that it's permitted. Why is it permitted? Because it was certainly made to beautify the city. It's not meant to serve, it's just meant to be there. My tama lenoi avdelei. They make it to beautify the city. Says the Gemara, if it's a village, who would make it for beautification? Does a village have the money to put up plain statues to beautify the village? If you find it in a village, certainly they're using it to serve it, to bow to that statue. This following is the right version. Amar Rabba said, the machlokes between Rameir and the Chachamim is Bishal Kraken. If you find a statue in a city, a statue of a king at the entrance of the city, so Rameir says it's Asar Bahana. Aval b'shekvarim, if you find the statue at the entrance to a village, Divrei HaKol Asurim, even the Chachamim will agree, every statue that's in the entrance of a village, a shtetl, is Asar, because the village is so poor, they wouldn't be able to put up a statue just to beautify. It must be that using that statue as a deity. And therefore, if you find that statue, it's Asar Bahana. Again, what does it mean, Asar Bahana? If you're alone with that statue, you just can't put your suit jacket on top of that statue because you're not allowed to benefit from that statue. So if you don't know if it was used for an Avodah Zarah, if you find a statue at the entrance of a village, you can assume that it was used for Avodah Zarah. But Chachamim say that if you find that same statue at the entrance of a city, is only Asar Bahana only if the statue is holding on to something that demonstrates that the person that the statue represents, which is the king, is trying to view himself as a deity, that he rules over the world. So what does he have to hold in his hand? Makil. If he's holding over a stick, what does that represent? It's basically saying, in the reverse way, but it's basically saying that the king rules over the entire world like he holds on to a stick. Just like, he controls a stick, he controls the entire world. Tzipor, if he's holding on to a bird, he means to say, the symbolism is, he rules over the entire world like a bird. Just like he caught a bird and he controls the bird, he's ruling over the entire world that way. Kadur, if he's holding on to a ball, he's holding on to the entire world like he holds on to this ball. So that represents. Tana, we learned it in Brisa, they added on a few other things if he holds. If the statue is holding on to. If you see the statue holding on to a sayif, a knife, a sword, a tara, if it's wearing a crown, v'tabas, it was a ring. Our Mishnah didn't say that. Our Mishnah didn't seem to hold, because our Mishnah held sayif, if it's holding on to a knife, Mikarasov, our Mishnah held, list the Malma. It doesn't represent that the person's a deity. It means that he's a violent person. But Saif Savar, but the end we understood that the reference is he can kill anybody in the entire world. That's what it represents. So again, it's viewed as a deity. Atar, if you see the statue wearing a crown, Mikara Savar, we thought Gidol Klila Alma. He's just wearing he's just wearing a crown of somebody just put in like a nice ornament on him. But then we understood it means Qatar Lamelech. It's put there on purpose to show that he's the king of the world. Tabas, if you see him holding on to a ring, Mikarasar, our Mishnah held that doesn't show deity. Ishtaime Ba'alma. He's carrying a ring for somebody else. Well, Saif Savar, in the end we hold, that means that he can signet ring any person, he can sign him off to death. So that's that's the Chachamim. So again, you go into the entrance of a city. According to the Chachamim, if you see a statue of a king at the entrance to a city, you could assume that it's not used for Avodah Zarah, and you could put your suit jacket on it. You could benefit from it. You could lean against it. It's not an Avodah Zarah. It's there to beautify and make a nice statue. However, if you see the statue of the king at the entrance of the city, and it's holding on to a symbolism that shows that he rules over the world, like he's holding on to a stick or a ball, or like the Brisa said, even if he's holding on to a sword or a crown or a ring, so that shows that this statue is used as an idol for sure, and therefore you're not allowed to benefit from that idol. Stay away. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, Afila Tana, we learned in the Brisa, Afila Tzrar, Afila Kesem. Even if you see that the idol, the statue is holding on to a rock or a piece of wood, a wood chip, it's still a symbolism that this statue is used for an Avodah Zarah. So now the Gemara asks the question. Boya Ravashi asked the question. Again, you're finding a statue. You don't know for sure if it's used for an Avodah Zarah. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says if it's holding on to anything, it shows it's used for an Avodah Zarah. But let's say Tafas b'yadei tzoya mahu. Maybe if it's holding on to excrement. What is that a symbolism of? Do we say Kuli Alma Zili Ba'apik that the reference is that the entire world is like excrement to him, that he's more important than the entire world? And again, this is a sign that this statue is a deity type of statue. Dilma, maybe who me is the Zil Ba'ape Kuli Alma that the world looks at him as excrement. In other words, that this became such a funny representation of the leader that people make fun of it and don't use it as an idol because he's holding on to excrement. So that's a sign that the people are going to infer other things about this statue, that the leader was like excrement. Teku, the Gemara remains this unresolved. Okay, Mishnah. Till now, we were discussing Tselem. A Tselem is something you don't know. It's a statue of a human being, and you don't know if Goyim used it as an Avodah Zarah. So according to Reb Meir, any statue that you find is Asur Bahana. According to the Chachamim, in a statue that you find that's holding on to an item, like a stick, only then it's Asur Bahana. Says the Mishnah, Hamoitze Shivrei Solamim. Let's say you find a broken statue. So then, Hare Elu Mutarin, it's mutter. Why? Because even you don't know for sure it was used as a deity or not. And even if it was used as a deity, maybe it was broken on purpose. Maybe the Goyim broke it on purpose. Like they took, they smashed Stalin's statue. And they broke it on purpose. So a Goy that destroys an Avodah Zarah, it's no more an Avodah Zarah, Asur Bahana. On Matzah Tavnis Yada, Tavnis Regel, if you find just a hand or a foot, and we're going to learn that this hand or foot came from a statue, but you think it came from a statue, but it's on its own base. It has its own, setting that keeps it up. So then it's still used as an idol, because sometimes people will just worship a hand. So if you just see a hand or a foot, that could be a sign that it's used as an Avodah Zarah. And it's Asur Bahana. Again, you can't hang your suit on a finger of that hand. Amar Shmuel said, Afilu Shivri Avodah Zarah. Even if you see a broken Avodah Zarah, and it seems that humans broke it, so then you can assume that Goyim broke this Avodah Zarah. Let's say you have a certain representation of an Avodah Zarah, let's say, the golden cow, and you know it was used in Avodah Zarah, but now you see it's smashed on the floor. So you vandalize and smash. So you can assume that Goyim smashed it, and therefore it's no more an Avodah Zarah. Says the Gemara, Vanan Tanan Shibet Slamim. Our Mishnah only says the broken parts of a tselem, which is a human statue that you don't know for sure it was used for an Avodah Zarah. But if you know for sure if it was used for an Avodah Zarah, it may not be permitted. And says the Gemara, Hu Adin, our Mishnah means to say that fila shivrei Avodah Zarah, even the broken parts of an Avodah Zarah is also bahana. Because the Mishnah is talking about statues that you don't know it was used for an Avodah Zarah, because the Mishnah wants to say a chiddush in the Sefer. Matzah tavnas yad tavnas regel. If you find a statue of a hand or just of a foot, it's also nevad, because maybe some people will serve just the hand and just the foot. Now, if it would just say, if it were just talking about Avodah Zarah, certainly it would be aser, because if you know for sure it's served as an Avodah Zarah, it's aser. But the Mishnah wants to teach you a novelty, that even if you don't know for sure that they would serve a human hand or a human foot, but since it was in the form of a statue, it's aser, because similar items, it's not unheard of that they would serve just a hand and just a foot. Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, the Mishnah matzah tavnis yad tavnis regel arei lusurim. If they find a hand or a foot, it's also to benefit from it. Because they serve sometimes these idols, these hands or feet. Says the Gemara, Amai, why would they serve a hand or a foot? We go to Amid Beis, didn't it break off from a normal statue? This hand, the foot, was once part of a larger statue. So if it's broken on the floor, why would it become aser? What happened was, yes, it broke off from a larger statue, but somebody picked it up and just put it on its own base. And therefore, now it's a separate entity by itself. So somebody made it important. So it could be that they're going to start to serve it and use it under the Avodah Zarah. So if you just see it there, out there in the open, don't use it, because it might be an Avodah Zarah. Now, let's go in Itmar. We have an Machlekes. Avodah Zarah. Let's say you have an Avodah Zarah, a golden cow. You know for sure that Goyim used to serve this idol, and it's out there, and nobody's around. And you watch, a hurricane comes and it breaks it. It breaks apart by itself. Rabbi Yochanan says Asura. The idol remains still aser, because it wasn't broken by a human. A hurricane came and broke it. Rab Shimon ben Lakish mutaris. It's mutar. Rabbi Yochanan Amasura haloi bitla. Rabbi Yochanan said it's also because a human did not nullify it. The guy didn't break it; it was broken by a hurricane. Shimon ben Lakish mutaris. It's mutar. Mistama betulim mivatale. We're going to assume that the guy would say it's nullified. Meima he'll say to himself, "Iyam nafshli atzla." If it couldn't save itself, it's going to save me. If it was broken by the hurricane, so this idol is worth nothing, because it couldn't save its own skin, its own body, so it's not going to save me. So Rav Shimon ben Lakish says that if it's broken by itself, it's mutter. We learned in the Tanakh that when the Plishtim were held hostage to Oren, the Tanakh tells us that night their Avodah Zarah fell to the floor, and it fell by the threshold of the temple. Uksiv al kei lo yidruchu kahana dogim. They wouldn't step over the threshold. So we see from there that even though it broke by itself, God made it break by itself, it was still the place where the Avodah Zarah was treated with respect. So therefore, we see if it breaks by itself, it doesn't lose its deity by the goyim. It still has a value by the goyim. Amaloi, Rav Shimon Lakish says, Mishram Rai, is that the proof? Just the opposite. Awesome over there, Shamanichan Asadogan. They left the mermaid, they were serving a mermaid, and since it broke, Va'ivdin as a miftan, they started serving the threshold, the place by the door where the Avodah Zarah fell. The Amri Hachi, because they said here, Shavki Isur Lidagim Ma'asa Yesev Al Miftan. The power that was in this Dagoin Avodah Zarah went to the threshold. So therefore, it's they were Mavatal their Avodah Zarah, the Dagoin, because it broke by itself, and now they're worshiping the threshold. Esvei, we learned, we ask a question. If you find a broken part of a statue, it's mutter. But any broken part of an avodah zarah, let's say a golden calf that you know it was broken, asur, and it's asur. So this seems to be not like Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says if it breaks by itself, then it's mutter. And says the Gemara, loy tema, don't say shivrei avodah zarah asurin. Ela say like this: Hatzlam and atzman asurim. If you find a statue by itself, it's asur. Ustamik Rameir, like Meir says, any statue is asur. Only if it's a broken statue, it's mutter. Says the Gemara, will you hear what the Rabbanan say? According to Rabbanan, avodah zarah name hi asura ushvara el mutarim. Just like Rameir, will hold that the statue is aser. If you find a broken statue, it's mutter. According to Rabbanan, it has to be an avodah zarah. So they'll say an avodah zarah whole is aser, but if you find it broken, I don't care how it broke, it should be mutter. So the Gemara says no. So this will be a question against Rabbi Yochanan. Hachi hashta hasam over there by a statue. Ema avodim, ema loy avodim. We don't know if a statue was used as an avodah zarah or not used as an avodah zarah. It's a statue of a human being. Even if you want to say it was used as an avodah zarah, the statue of this human being, ema bitlam. Maybe the guy broke it, and therefore it's not an avodah zarah. Avodah zarah, and here's the crux of Rabbi Yochanan. Avodah zarah vade avduha. The avodah zarah for sure was used as an avodah zarah. Mi yemar de batlu. Who will tell you that he was mavatal it? We don't know. Have a suffix vivade. The ain't suffix might see vade. This is where we'll stop over here, which means like this. Again, we have a machlekes between Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. You have a golden calf that all of a sudden a hurricane comes and breaks it. Says Rabbi Yochanan, it still remains aser, because you know for sure it's as a golden calf, it was used for an avodah zarah. Now the question is, if a hurricane broke it, does that mean that the goyim say, oh, it couldn't save itself, so it's going to save me? Did the goyim nullify it? We don't know. We know for sure it was an avodah zarah, and you're not sure whether the goyim would nullify the avodah zarah because it's broken now. So, ein suffix mitzi midei vadai. A suffix cannot undo something that's for sure. So for sure an avodah zarah, you don't know if they nullified it, so therefore it still remains an avodah zarah, and that's the key to Rabbi Yochanan's statement. The ein suffix mitzi midei vadai. Something that's a suffix cannot undo something that's for sure. If it's for sure an avodah zarah and you don't know if the goyim were nullifying it, so then it remains an avodah zarah. Nevertheless, Rav Shimon ben Lakish holds that if it was broken by a hurricane, it will remain mutter. Okay, we'll stop right over here.